The whole industry is unique, the way we fish our oysters, and the rivers are so pure and salty, and you'll always come back to the Malpeque oyster.
We really didn't have any oysters come spring. We had to cut back on what we were shipping.
Now I've been depending on oysters last 50 years. Now it's the other way around. They're depending on me.
Hello, I'm Tom Murphy. Welcome to Land and Sea. Oysters are a booming business here in the Maritimes. Millions are served up as delicacies around the world. But the industry is facing a big threat from something so small it can't be seen by the human eye. Parasites, not harmful to humans, but potentially deadly for the mollusks. Many questions remain, and the livelihoods of thousands of people are at risk. This is the busiest weekend of the year in Tyne Valley, Prince Edward Island. The community's annual Oyster Festival draws tourists. Family members fly home, and people who normally are on boats at dawn stay out late. It's a chance to kick back and savor these salty slurps. 3, 2, 1, shot! And of course, the highlight, a showcase of skills honed at kitchen tables for generations. Shuckers put to the test against friends and neighbors, all for a shot at glory. Every oyster has been harvested from the island's waters through hard work and perseverance. The Hardy family has been fishing in western P.E.I. for longer than the island has been a province. Now they grow oysters on about 120 hectares of waterways leased for aquaculture near East Biddeford. These siblings spend their summers working together.
All my older brothers and sisters did it, so I thought that I would try because it seemed like they had fun. They'd always come home with good stories.
If it's a hot day, we'll push each other over.
I like being around with my family. And I like the oysters.
Today's task? Submerging oysters in cages suspended just below the water's surface. It takes about 3 years for an oyster to grow from seed to serving size. The cages are rotated to ensure the oysters don't clump up, allowing the nutrient-rich salt water to circulate. At 21, Bradley Hardy now holds his own leases.
I kind of got grown into it, I guess. So it's always what I did. I always liked it. I like being out in the water. I like running a boat. I like being the captain. And I just work with mostly all my family members, so it's pretty nice to be close to everybody.
Bradley's grandfather, Leslie, is in his 80s and still works at his company's processing facility. Bags are shipped to markets and restaurants around North America. This batch is bound for Boston. Bradley and 5 of his 8 siblings work with his father, Gordon, himself one of 8. It's tough, year-round work. They sort oysters by hand for size and quality, putting smaller ones back underwater to keep growing. The money has been good, but there are no guarantees.
So this spring, we got hit pretty hard, and once we raised our cages, we just didn't know where to start. And this year, we had as high as 90% dead per line.
Dead oyster after dead oyster. A gruesome discovery a year after a disease was first detected in the island's oysters. The culprit is a parasite known as multinucleate sphere unknown X, or MSX. It doesn't affect people, but it attacks an oyster's digestive system.
So right here is just stuff that 2 oysters that recently died in the last week or so. You can see the meat still on them. It's a lot more. This is something that would have died, you know, maybe in the in the first time around last year whenever MSX first hit.
Oyster growers don't qualify for provincial crop insurance programs. So far, there's no compensation. When officials asked for proof of his losses, Gordon Hardy paved his driveway with the shells. This is $1 million worth of lost product, a massive hit, and there could be more to come. The Hardys haven't slowed down, though, but they're noticing their 1- and 2-year-old oysters aren't growing as well.
Yeah, it really is a waiting game. And you just don't know whether to keep at what you're doing, to expand more, or just kind of play it safe, I guess.
The tiny parasites are causing ripples of worry along the shorelines of P.E.I. In addition to the hundreds of people who cultivate oysters, there are still nearly 200 fishermen who earn their living harvesting wild oysters that grow on the beds of rivers and bays.
I'm checking for size, and then I'm cleaning off any small oysters that might be attached or shell.
For Martin Smith, it's peaceful work.
I got nobody to answer to but myself. It's just up to how hard I want to work at the day and how much I'm looking at making. I don't have to answer to anybody. It's a good job.
He picks oysters the traditional way, using tongs. Martin worries about people's mental health amid so much uncertainty. Calls to an industry line that offers counseling services have ballooned in recent years. He's vice president of a provincial shellfish organization that has been lobbying federal and provincial decision makers to take action to support the people who depend on oysters.
It's just a hit and miss right now. It's just more to it. More of a head game, I guess, this year.
For decades, fishermen worked in the sheltered coves of Bedeque Bay, an area known as the heart of the wild oyster fishery. But MSX killed off all but a few dozen oysters there, forcing fishers to seek out smaller rivers, often driving so far their catch barely covers their fuel. Shane Murphy has fished for 4 decades, but filling his buckets has gotten a lot harder thanks to MSX. The younger fishermen are on his mind.
Never thought it'd ever come to this. As long as you're healthy and you fish, you could go out and make a day's pay. Didn't think it'd ever come to this. And most fishermen, that's all they know what to do. They're not educated to go work anywhere else. Depend on the summer and the water, and if it warms up a lot, it could start killing them, same as Bedeque. This could be our last day fishing.
Coming up, a collapsed industry in Cape Breton offers a cautionary tale. Cape Breton's interior is home to the Bredor Lake Estuary, a unique ecosystem where salt water from the Atlantic Ocean mixes with the fresh water flowing from the island's river systems. Oysters have helped sustain generations of people living on these shores. A traditional food, part of Joe Gugu's Mi'kmaq culture, and the way he's always made a living.
Come on, I hate that when that happens. First time I started oystering, I was only 10 years old, and I was getting oysters for $2 a box at the time. I was asked to retire 7 years ago, but no, I'm not going to retire. I love doing this. To me, this is my livelihood, and I love doing it. So, free. See all around me? I don't have to answer to anybody, except for eagles, the one right there now.
People started growing oysters commercially in Cape Breton in the mid-20th century, but all that changed in 2002. Biologist Robin Stewart got a call from a concerned grower.
He'd worked since he was knee-high with his father in oysters, and he said, "Robin, I've never seen anything like this. You've got to get your gear on and come up and look at my lease." So I went up and I dove on the lease, and I'd never seen anything like it. It was a mortuary. It was hundreds thousands and thousands of dead oysters everywhere on his lease.
Samples showed it was the parasite MSX, the first time it was detected in Canada.
Everything stopped. The oyster industry, there was people in all over the place that had leases developed. They were going to be buying millions of seed from Escasoni and put them on their bottom leases. That all stopped. It was just at the cusp of being a very, very big, significant industry in Cape Breton, and bang, MSX hit.
At the time, Joe was growing nearly 500,000 oysters. They all died.
But there were a lot of oysters. I was getting 25, 30 boxes a day diving, and that was my livelihood at the time. But once that MSX hit, it was all gone. So it was pretty hard.
For Robin and Joe, the sting of government inaction in the years that followed has never gone away.
But I wish the government stepped in a long time ago. This would be not being going full blast now. So.
Now, with the discovery of MSX in other parts of Canada, there is renewed urgency in learning how oysters can survive despite the parasite.
All of a sudden, there's all kinds of people and governments want to spend millions of dollars on research, right? But this could have been done 20 years ago. It wasn't. It wasn't. It was a lost opportunity. We're 20 years later.
You can see there's MSX parasites here.
Rod Beresford is one of the few Canadian biologists devoted to studying the diseases that damage oysters. He says MSX can infect an area and lurk for years. It strikes under a combination of conditions. Scientists have been grappling with what exactly those are since the parasite hit the east coast of the U.S. in the 1950s. Water temperature and salinity appear to play a role. Mortality often spikes after a mild winter or hot spells.
One of the big challenges with MSX is not knowing its life cycle, but in addition to that, it's really, really unpredictable. So there's instances where we don't find MSX until someone looks down and finds, 10,000 or 50,000 dead oysters.
MSX decimated the oyster industry in Bredor Lake 20 years ago. It was first detected in P.E.I. in New Brunswick in 2024. Researchers still don't know how the disease travels or why some infected oysters survive and others don't. MSX isn't the only disease impacting oysters in the Maritimes either. Within months in 2024, dermo was found too. It doesn't hurt humans either, but spreads from oyster to oyster and can cause massive die-offs.
The ecological consequences of losing oysters in these water bodies, it's significant. So, when you're an oyster, say 2 to 3 inches can filter, on the order of 40 to 45 gallons of water a day. That's a lot of water cleansing power that you now remove from a system. So as that changes, what happens to other populations in these water bodies?
This Cape Breton Bay used to be full of dories harvesting oysters. It has been an MSX hotspot with no oysters surviving. These biologists received a federal grant to study how the shellfish respond to and grow despite the disease.
Oysters are so cool.
They worked with Joe and brought in dozens of oysters transplanted from the opposite side of the island to see if they'll survive. They hope it'll have relevance across the region.
So, just that one mortality in surface one.
And there's more at stake than the industry.
The Bredor is a natural hatchery for a lot of marine species. The oyster larvae are food for juvenile fish, and when all those oysters are gone, the estuary is not the same. I'm really afeared that it's not just an oyster food that we're missing an integral part of an estuary or a biosphere that it's never going to be the same if we don't put more effort into it.
Robin still works as an aquaculture consultant. He and Joe have been working to figure out the conditions under which oysters will thrive here.
These are empty here.
Now, if there was an MSX present in these oysters, they'd be very watery and thin. You wouldn't have much meat there at all. You have to know your environment intimately everywhere you're growing. When you're growing oysters, farming them, you have to be able, and you're going to have to tailor the type of way you grow them to just best suited for that environment.
I didn't want to quit. That's the problem. I knew they could come back.
Joe found oysters grown on the bottom of waterways didn't last, but those suspended in bags in water that freezes have done well. Despite the gains he's made, Joe is the only person left growing this many oysters in the Brador, and he sees potential for far more.
Down the road, I like to sell to Sobeys and all that. Hopefully, anyway, soon. Because I have too many oysters now. There are only 3 of us trying to control that almost 1 million oysters here now.
Joe's son and grandson have started working alongside him. He hopes other Mi'kmaq fishers will get into the business.
I've been depending on them all my life. Now it's time for me to pay back. So, and I think I could do it. Another 5 years, I think I could start other research to do this. Or any other fisherman wants to do it, I'll teach him what to do. Because I don't want to take this to my grave. Like, it took me over 50 years to learn this, so why keep it to myself? Yeah. So.
Joe isn't the only person not giving up on oysters, and work is underway to try to ward off the threat posed by an unpredictable disease. The Oyster Festival Parade in Tyne Valley, Prince Edward Island, is an event people don't miss. The industry is one of the big employers in the area, from tourism to shipping to the money that goes into local stores and garages. With the arrival of shellfish diseases that cause die-offs, there are restrictions on where unprocessed oysters can be moved. Federal and provincial officials continue to test samples and have pledged funding for more research. The Hardy family always goes all out. This year's float, a slightly macabre Adams family, with a nod to the challenges they've been facing, but also a chance to delight the community and laugh together, all the more needed after a difficult year.
He did the oyster mash. It caused the waves to crash.
Meanwhile, in Sydney, Nova Scotia, in a nondescript industrial park on the outskirts of town, Cape Breton University professor Rod Beresford and a team of researchers dig into the science of oysters and the diseases that damage them, hoping their work can help people across the Maritimes. Some of their equipment looks futuristic, and history shows there's a lot at stake.
I do this work because the Brador is its own little ecosystem and has many ecosystems within it, so it's very interesting. Also, after meeting the growers that lost their farms, helping them get them back has been really meaningful and important, and their stories are just great, and you get to know them and have fun with them, and you really want to help them thrive.
I grew up in Glace Bay, and in the 90s when the cod crisis hit, I had friends who, my dad doesn't work here anymore, my mom, the fish plant closed, dad can't go fishing. So, and even going to P.E.I. and having those conversations, some of those guys lived through that as well and then became oyster fishermen.
This team is working on a rapid test that could be easily transported to an oyster farm so people could know immediately if their animals were diseased. Information that could inform decisions about moving them and limit transmission. They've also set up a mobile hatchery in a shipping container that could be moved to different communities, allowing farmers to monitor the condition of oysters and nurture their growth in a controlled environment.
The industry is going to have to work toward resistant strains. So oysters that show some level of resistance and resistance to mortality, resistance to infection for one and both diseases, depending on the state of where the oysters are. And the only way you can do that is through this kind of a facility or similar type hatchery.
Rod says for many years there was no funding for research, and now that there is, sharing data between areas and institutions will be crucial to ensure people get information quickly. But he cautions, though, that developing a disease-resistant oyster will take time.
If we look to the US, because they've been on this journey, in some places longer than others, there's examples where it's taken, 10, 12 years before they get that oyster strain that's showing resistance to mortality, resistance to infection, hitting the market.
Back in P.E.I, the Shellfish Association, with some provincial funding, is trying to adapt and have set up a new nursery.
We grow them up to big enough that they're less predators can eat them. We spread them and they're usually at least that size.
Year-old oysters will be supported in tanks and given a shot to grow before eventually being spread on riverbeds, in hopes they'll replenish some of the depleted wild stocks. Similar work is being done in hatcheries that sell seed to aquaculture operations. Waiting and wondering isn't easy. The Hardys are keeping a close eye on their stocks. Though it's been detected in waters across P.E.I, so far MSX has hit some areas harder than others. Mortality has ranged, even on the same rivers.
It's nice to see a lot of research being done. It's also nice to see some money being given out to maybe people that might not even have enough money to make the next year's round. That's just a gamble for others, but some people are in a worse boat than others.
Bradley Hardy is up for weathering this gamble, hoping his family's oysters survive until next season, and that the industry, so important to people in this region, carries on.
I like my job. Well, I like what I'm doing a lot. So I guess I'll go until there's no more, I guess.